Today I'm going to show you how to breed thousands of mealworms for as little as $2 a month. So to breed mealworms, you're only going to need 4 things. You're going to need some oatmeal for the mealworm container. Then you're going to need the container itself. Now I use these 12-quart Sterilite containers. I get them at Walmart. I'll have them linked on this video. They come in a 4-pack. You only need 2. If you want to use all 4, you totally can. Next up is food, and all you need to feed them is some baby carrots. That's it. You just give them baby carrots and they're good to go. But let's set up this tub for our mealworms because a lot of people set it up wrong, but let me show you how to do it right. So for one of these 12-quart tubs, all you need is 1 box of oatmeal. This is 42 ounces of oatmeal. It is 2 pounds of oatmeal. Now, a lot of people will just pour this in as is. They don't grind it up or make it smaller or anything like that. When they pour it in like that, it can work, but I've had trouble with them breeding fast doing it that way. So what I do is I blend it up a little bit. I don't want it to be a powder, but I don't want it to be the flakes. I want it in between where it's kind of the flakes a little bit, but also a little bit of powders in there. And how do I do that? I just get a blender, a home blender. You can get this at Walmart as well. They're very cheap, it's like $12. So when I blend up the oats, I'll pour in a tiny amount of oats in the blender. Because when you pour too much in it, it doesn't really grind it up evenly, so I just do a little bit at a time. Then after I blend it up, I just pour it into the tub. I repeat this process until I blended the entire 2-pound container. This is the consistency I'm going for when I blend up the oats. As you can see, this is the unblended version right here. It's more whole oats, and this is the blended up version. As you can tell, I just want the oatmeal to be a little bit more chopped up for the baby mealworms. So now that we have our oatmeal, now it's time to get our mealworms. Now, where do we buy our mealworms at? You can honestly buy them anywhere. You can buy them at PetSmart. You can buy them at your local Pet Sense. You can buy them online. Rainbow Mealworms sells them for like $500 for $20. It's pretty cheap. Anyways, whatever you do, you want to start off with a minimum of 50 mealworms, okay? Minimum of 50. For like a size, this size, if you want to start really, really fast and get huge amounts of mealworms, I say start with 250. 250, this size right here, you're gonna have thousands very, very soon. Now that you have your mealworms, it's time to add some housing for them. Mealworms like to hide under things, so I use paper towel tubes or toilet paper tubes for that. I cut it in half and I put it on top of the oatmeal. The next part is what's gonna make this process so easy. The cups that your mealworms come in, get those. Now the bottom of those cups are usually pretty slick, so you can get sandpaper or anything that can scratch them up to make the surface have more grip. I didn't have any sandpaper lying around, so I used a screw. I scratch it up to where it looks really rough like this right here. This is really important because you want someplace your pupae can stay and not get eaten by the mealworms. The pupae is the second stage of life of a mealworm. It goes mealworm, then they turn into pupae, and finally the beetle, which lays the eggs, that turn to mealworms. But the pupae need to be protected because the mealworms will eat them. Look at this tub right here where it blew up like crazy. I had thousands of mealworms, and as you can see, there's lots of dead pupae because the mealworms ate the pupae. You can find the pupae pretty easy because they will usually just sit right on top of the oatmeal. So when you see them, just grab them and put them on top of the cup. After a week or 2, they turn into beetles, and those beetles will crawl off like this right here and go eat the carrots you put into the tub. And if you don't scratch the cup up, it's really hard for the beetles to gain traction and crawl off the cup. That's why I scratch the cup up so the beetles will have grip to jump off. I replace the carrots every 2 to 3 days, and that's when I check for pupae. When you see the pupae, put them on the cup. They fall off when they become beetles. It's super simple and super easy. Now that's the entire system. It is self-sufficient. You don't need a secondary one. Some people have it to where they separate all the mealworms. You don't even have to do that. It will be all in one, super easy to manage. However, eventually you're gonna have to replace it because they're gonna eat up all the food, right? It's gonna look like this. So this is when we just start out. As you can see, it's pretty good. And this is after about 3 months right there. It's kind of getting lower. And now this is after 6 months of mealworms. All the food is gone. There is no more food in here. Right there, that's just mealworm poop and mealworm, or the beetles of the mealworm's eggs. So this is what we have to do. As you can tell, there's a big color difference there because it's just poop, mealworm eggs, and then mealworms. So, and then there's beetles dead in there. So we have to, that's why I'm building this new one, because I'm gonna take all of this and put it in here. And that's another thing people ask me all the time is like, how do I replace this and, you know, clean it to start a new colony? Bam, this is how we're gonna do it. So I get a clean tub and a cup. Then I get this pooper scooper for reptiles. I'll link it down below. I use this scooper to sift all the mealworms and beetles while the poop sifts and falls through the bottom of the pooper scooper. After that, I just dump the mealworms from the pooper scooper into the tub. And after I've scooped out all the mealworms I could, this is where I start hand picking out all the dead beetles and pupae and putting them into a cup so I could throw them away. After I went through all of that, we will have nothing but some mealworms, beetles, and maybe some pupae. I just toss all of those in my new tub. But the stuff you sifted out, like the poop, eggs, and even the tiny microscopic baby mealworms, I will put this in a Ziploc bag, freeze it for 24 hours, and throw it in the trash. Now let's talk about how we will store the mealworm farm to keep it from getting moldy and nasty. Now, a lot of people ask me, do I need a lid for this? No, they can't climb up walls. They barely can climb off of the lid I have in there. They struggle pretty hard with that. So I usually just have it open. And the reason I have it open is because mealworms actually produce a lot of moisture. If you cover the top of this and there is no ventilation, it's going to get crazy moist in here, and it's going to get humid, and all the water is going to collect on the walls, get onto the oatmeal. It's going to mold. It's going to smell atrocious. And that's another thing. This should have no smell. If you smell something, you're doing something wrong. The oatmeal is probably getting too wet. Something's going wrong, because this usually has no smell. But eventually when it gets to this stage, it kind of has a slight smell. It's like, I don't know. You really won't smell it unless you get close to it, and it's just all the poop, okay? That's when you need to replace it with a new bin of oatmeal. But yeah, I don't use any lids at all. I just tuck them in there like so, just on a shelf or somewhere. Now, it is very important. You don't want this to be too cold, okay? If the mealworms will not breed if it's too cold. The best temperatures for mealworm breeding is between 72 and 80 Fahrenheit. I myself like it around 76 to 80 Fahrenheit. When you get below 68 degrees, breeding and growth pretty much stop completely. So you really want to store these guys somewhere that is a little warm, or at least between 70 to 80 degrees. Now, one thing people ask me is how long will it take to get from the mealworms in the store to a self-producing farm? And I'll say it depends on how big the mealworms are when you bought them. A lot of times they can be small, but if they're over an inch or an inch long, you're pretty much going to have beetles very soon. So it might take like a month before you have beetles. I would say you're probably looking around 3 months once you start your farm that you're going to see your first baby mealworm. And they will be small. A lot of times you'll have the beetles walk around, but you'll have eggs, you won't even know it, because the eggs are so small, they're at the bottom of the tank. And if you move all this stuff out of the way, look at the very bottom of the tank, you're going to see tiny, tiny microscopic looking mealworms all over the place. Because when they hatch, they are tiny. You almost can't even see them. And that's why I like to grind up the oatmeal, because they have such tiny mouths that they really can't eat the flakes that well. But when it's powder, they eat it a lot better. Helps them grow faster because it's easier to digest for their little tiny system. Anyways, that's all it is. That right there, self-sufficient. I hope this helped. And if it did, I hope you get tens of thousands of mealworms. Like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.